95.7 The Hog, the Morning Hog. How you doing? I'm Riggs. I'm just hanging out on this Friday, not much to do. And I was like, you know what I should do? So I got my cell phone out, and I dialed Josh from SR Parat. He's right over here. And then he was like, hold on a second. If you want me to come over, I'm going to bring a friend too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that Steve from Alcatraz right there?
Steve from
what?
Alcatraz.
That's me.
Look out. I like this.
again.
Well, welcome home, my friend. How are
Like
you?
a bad penny that keeps turning
Well,
around.
no. Believe me, this is not many people return to this studio. So.
yeah, that's true.
So good for you, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because we're breaking ground.
We are
on this
breaking ground.
brew review.
At least that I can think of.
Right, we've been doing this for a minute. I don't think we've ever done anything like this before.
Yeah, we've talked about comparisons in the past, but I don't think we've done any direct comparisons side by side in the studio before. So I'm pretty excited to do this and try, one of Steve's beers and a competitor's beers, and and kind of go from there.
And we're not pulling. We're going straight at it. We're going at the market leader for the category of beer that my Alcatraz Double Cold Brew is in.
Right.
And this is all. I want to hear what you guys think.
Okay.
That's confidence right there.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going head to head. The beer that we're going head to head with is 100 points in Rate Beer and 100 points in Beer Advocate.
That's as high as it gets, I think.
That's
right?
correct.
It goes to 100.
So if you go to, for example, like Total Wine, typically on their tags, it'll say those attributes for those beers that are high rated up there.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big deal in the craft community when they get those ratings. So to go directly against competitors and be confident about it, I believe in Steve, and I think this can be good.
And it's a truly logarithmic progression. So what happens is you get closer to 100. There's very few beers.
Okay.
So there are very few 100-point beers.
Wow.
Very few.
Okay. Well, we have one here.
We have one here.
We have no idea what it is.
Wait, not yet.
It's represented by 95.7 The Hog, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. We've discussed. We disguised
The defending champion.
That's right.
If you've been in the craft community long enough, or you're a craft beer drinker, I think you know which beer this is getting put up against.
Sure.
But to not embarrass the other company, we're gonna try to keep it under wraps a little bit.
We're just gonna say hooray for Alcatraz. Hooray for Alcatraz anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because you're here, you're local.
How many years have you been brewing now?
So I've been brewing for 7 years, and I've been brewing the double cold brew that we're tasting today for about 4.5 years.
Okay.
And as opposed to most people when they first, start brewing craft beer, I evolved the recipe of this beer the first two or three brews.
Right.
Because I came to the beer business from a wine industry background, and I believe that you can always kind of tinker a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for like the last 2 years or so, I have not been changing the recipe at all. I feel like it's where it needs to be.
Right.
And the motivation behind doing this was a few weeks ago, I was sitting around tasting my beer, and I thought, wow, I really feel confident with this now.
Right.
So I went and picked up the beer that's widely considered to be the benchmark for coffee imperial stouts in the world.
Right.
And I brought it home and I tasted them side by side, and I said, I have an idea.
Yeah.
I want to go talk to Riggs and Josh about this.
I like this a lot.
So on the double cold brew, it's recently become my top seller in cans.
Okay.
Still not
Really?
on draft. The double IP is still best selling. Yeah, but the double cold brew is really having its moment right now. It's widely available. We'll discuss the distribution at the end. And so I thought maybe what we'd do is to start talking a little bit about stouts in general.
Okay.
Then talk about imperial stouts.
All right.
And then taste these two beers.
All right, okay. I'm in, man.
So the weird thing about stouts that most people don't realize is that they actually started as porters. So people always get very confused. What's the difference between a porter and a stout?
I do.
That there's really not one. There's there's really not one.
Right. Okay,
They've started as porters in 1720s. They were named porters because the porters that actually, so think about back then, people didn't have cars, and so they were taking carriages and horseback everywhere. So there's always somebody to receive your suitcase, your baggage, or whatever, and take you on to the next place. And so the porters started drinking this inexpensive black beer.
Okay.
Now, this is a time where golden beers were really valued because glass was still a recent phenomenon. And hold the glass up and look at that beautiful golden color. Everybody was enamored with that.
Right.
So then with porters, they said, wait a minute, let's put some black malt in here. And so the porters ended up being less expensive, and they suddenly became all the rage because the porters were all drinking them.
Okay.
And so before long, it became the best-selling style of beer in all of England. Within like a seven-year period. And then along the way, some people started using the name stout. And the derivation of the name stout was if you think about a stout person, it's a person who's like a little bit heavier, maybe big shouldered, like a big guy, right? And so there's also a meaning historically in England that stout can also mean brave or courageous. So like a stout warrior. A stout warrior is someone who like really excels in the battlefield. So generally what happened is stouts became bolder, a little bit more bitter, and a little bit heavier than porters. And that's really the only difference. And so what that eventually led to is a higher alcohol typically in a stout versus in a porter.
Gotcha.
So then imperial stouts, which we're going to be tasting today, started in the 1750s, and they're called imperial stouts because the original batches of them, which were around 10% alcohol, were exported to the royal court in Russia. And the royal court warranted that these beers could be called imperial stouts.
Okay.
Since they were going to the king and and everybody
They
else.
got their stamp of
and
approval.
so these beers became another kind of sensation. Of course, they weren't as big sellers as the porters because they were more expensive, higher in alcohol, et cetera.
Fancy.
And so as imperial stouts kind of grew, coffee became the most popular style of an addition to an imperial stout. So what we're going to be tasting today are 2 imperial coffee stouts.
Okay.
And with that, Josh, if you could do the honors,
absolutely.
we'll start off with beer number 1.
It's
Now,
pretty wild to think about the namesake of these things. When you see a beer and you hear porter or stout or anything like that, you just kind of rolls off the back of your head and you don't really think about the history behind it and the history of beer in general. So it's fantastic to hear stuff like that.
I didn't know.
And I actually refamiliarized myself with this stuff recently because once upon a time I'd studied. No, we're going to do the defending champion.
Steve, not many people study for the Brew Review. Josh does.
Not only studied, but the notes and the whole deal.
Yeah, I barely remembered to wear a shirt today, but it's great information, and it also helps to know too that you're having something that has this kind of that was a legacy. There's a legacy behind these beers. All right.
So the defending champion, who we're not going to describe the name.
Do I need a blindfold, by the way?
No, you're good. You're good. They're going to be about the same color.
All right.
He was really looking forward to wearing a blindfold.
I brought one.
Any excuse to wear a blindfold.
Some call it.
Right?
Carries one around with him.
Yeah.
So this is a beer that's brewed in the Midwest. It's 8.3% alcohol.
Okay.
Not only is it a coffee stout, but it also has a little bit of chocolate in it as well. And so go ahead and taste it and keep in mind.
So it actually has chocolate. It's not from chocolate malt
No,
or anything like
this is actually coffee and chocolate.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
You can,
Along with a little bit of oatmeal flakes.
you can certainly smell.
Coffee, oatmeal, and chocolate. This sounds like an ideal morning brew, right there.
So on the nose, it smells fantastic, and you actually get the chocolate and the coffee on the nose for sure. Feel like it's missing a little bit of mouthfeel, personally. But it is a fantastic beer in its own right, for sure.
It's really a great beer, and the surprising thing to me every time I go back and taste it, because I've been drinking this beer for decades, is it's more bitter than I ever remember it. Like after you drink it for a while, you get used to that flavor profile. But when I go back and taste it now, I'm like, wow, I'm a little surprised at how bitter it is on the front.
See, I don't drink coffee, so I don't have an attachment to what a coffee flavor would be. So to me, this is more effervescent than I would think it would be. It's got a little bit more of a some more bubbly, but then also it does have a bite.
Yeah.
What I would assume is a coffee bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a coffee bite, but actually this beer is listed at 60 IBUs, which is a very high number for a stout.
Yeah.
So that's international bitterness units, and we won't get dragged down into exactly what that means. But the bottom line is that on the line of imperial stouts, this is one of the more bitter imperial stouts. Most of them are like 25, 30. My beer that we're going to get to next is 30 IBUs.
Okay.
Right.
So there's a dramatic difference there just in the bitterness level.
Yeah, and personally, I have a very sharp palate when it comes to bitterness. So for me, that's actually the first thing I taste when it comes to this particular beer.
Right.
So let's go on to beer number 2.
All right, here we go.
Keep beer number 1 out, so you can always go back and do a comparison.
Hold it here.
So beer number 2
get a marker.
is the local challenger, the Alcatraz Double Cold Brew. This beer is brewed in Florida at Lakeland Brew Hub in Lakeland, Florida.
Okay.
It's 8.8% alcohol, so a little bit higher in alcohol.
Okay.
And the other difference is that it is only coffee added, so there is no chocolate and there is no oatmeal in this beer.
Okay.
Other than that, they're very similar. 8.3 versus 8.8.
Okay.
And with coffees being the predominant adjunct.
All right. So no chocolate. But will we feel like we taste chocolate? Will it fool us?
I believe you will, but that's for you to tell the audience.
Oh boy. Oh. Well, that's it's very the texture's different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is
I
surprising
prefer-
because typically oatmeal is one of those things you kind of get that gets you the extra mouthfeel, and you're not using it in your beer.
No.
And you have to me a stronger mouthfeel. The coffee is fantastic. That's a good beer, man.
For what I like about beer flavor, this is a beer with additives.
It's almost a cold brew that just happens to be a beer.
Right.
And part of the reason
Yeah.
for that is the way that we make this beer. And I'm not aware that anybody else is doing this. We roast the coffee beans. They're Guatemalan high elevation coffee beans.
Mm-hmm.
We roast them to a very low temperature roast.
Okay.
You got a quick time for a story on this one?
Please.
On the
You want to take a
roasting?
break first?
Let's take a. We'll tease them.
Yeah.
We're going to find out about how these coffee beans
Yeah.
are roasted
What?
when we're right back.
Text in what Fahrenheit do you think they're roasting these coffee beans at? 257-0324. And Steve will reveal the answer and give away his shirt coming up on the Morning Hog on 95.7 The Hog.
Do not send us.
He's got a swimmer's body. He's fun. Riggs, the Morning Hog, 95.7 The Hog, Daytona's rock station. We're in the midst of a Morning Hog brew review. Josh Messar-Perrott and Steve from Alcatraz Brewing, our local friends in Alcatraz. Now, we did a side-by-side taste test, and I blindfolded myself with these. I put duct tape on the inside of these glasses. It stuck to my...
We said you didn't need it. We told you not to wear them.
I was just trying to give you an honest review of the beers, and so I
think
thought
you
it'd be
just
better
wanted-
if I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Well, it heightens your senses, right, Steve?
It does.
Everybody knows this.
Yeah.
Take the sense of sight away and the sense of smell
Right.
and hearing all get higher.
When you're brewing, when you're making a new Alcatraz, whatever version, whatever you're making, you probably blindfold
I
yourself.
blindfold myself and then I try to write the recipe.
Yeah.
Are you guys aware that you have natural blindfolds?
What's up?
You just close your eyes.
Oh, I just see dots. Again, yeah, I don't know. I know what you're
tried
talking
that.
about.
yeah.
All right, no.
So-
Previously on the Morning Hog Brew review, we had a cliffhanger,
We did.
right?
Yeah.
Steve was telling us about the Chilean high altitude Chilean
Guatemalan.
Oh, I just changed countries. Well, they're close together, right? Pretty
Yeah,
sure.
Geography is not our strong suit.
I was told there'd be no geography on this episode. All right, so the Guatemalan high altitude coffee beans.
Yes. So, with everything that I put in my beer, I always try to have some personal experience with it whenever I
I'm
possibly.
going to keep drinking your beer while you talk about it.
Please do. So I actually went out to Concord Roasting Company, where we have these coffee beans roasted in Lakeland, Florida, nearby where the Brew Hub facility is, where the beer is made.
Okay.
And I roasted the coffee beans with them, and I was very impressed at the process, because they actually roast these beans differently than they roast the same beans when they serve them in their barista. They actually roast them to a lower finished roast than they do the beans that they serve.
Okay.
And so when we were done roasting the beans and you let them cool down, they're tan color. They're like kind of the color of this case on my phone right
Really?
here. A little bit lighter than that.
So not a
And I
burnt
said,
brown.
why are we not doing we not doing the espresso, Italian, French roast thing that's
Color
all,
you're so used to seeing.
all the rage right now?
Right.
And he said, Steve, do you like steak? I said, I love a good steak on occasion. I don't eat them all the time. He said, what would you think? He's talking to me. He says, what would you think if you brought me a USDA prime 28-day aged ribeye and asked me to go grill it? And I went back in the back, and I came back 20 minutes later, and I brought you the steak, and it was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah.
He said, would you be happy with that? I said, no. And then he said, why the F do you want me to burn these coffee beans? These are literally the best coffee beans in the world. And so, for lack of a better term, I think one of the things that's special about this beer is that the beans are actually roasted medium rare.
Right
Now,
on.
so that it gives so you asked earlier what you get out of that.
Yeah.
For me, I get the coffee for sure. But I do get a little element of chocolate. I get a little element of like lavender.
Okay.
That's all coming from the coffee beans. There's nothing else added in this beer. We literally take the beer, the stout, and we wait till it's chilled down to 34 degrees at the end of its fermentation, and then we pump it through the whole beans for 6.5 hours.
Okay.
So all of that flavor extraction is taking place at cold temperature, and it's the alcohol in the beer is the solvent that takes the flavors out of the coffee
That's
beans.
wild.
Wow.
But they're not burnt and they're not ground. The beans are just kept whole the entire time.
So their whole beans run it through at a cold temperature, so it's not like they're boiling the beer or send it through at a boil
It's made the same way that Pizza Starbucks makes a cold brew. I'm just using cold beer instead of cold water to pump through the beans.
It's fantastic, and the thing that I don't enjoy about some stouts is that burnt.
Right, and that's where you start getting into that too bitter.
I don't like a char.
So, Riggs, go back and taste the first beer again.
I'm going to go back to the first beer. Do I need blindfold or?
If you don't mind gouging your eyes.
First beer, okay.
So taste it and think about the roast on the coffee bean. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now go back to the second beer, to the Alcatraz double cold brew, and taste the same way. Yeah. Taste it just for the coffee.
It tastes like toast, like a more of a burnt toasty.
So now taste the Alcatraz double cold brew.
Let's go back.
So what I find is that the first beer tastes like you go to get a cup of coffee, and the pot's been sitting there.
Crazy. Yep.
The pot's been sitting there for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And this one tastes like I go to get a cup of coffee and it just finished brewing.
Right.
Like I think that's the biggest difference to me in these two beers. I love the first beer, the defending champion.
Sure.
And I would be more than happy when we go to have a beer somewhere.
Right.
If they have this beer on draft and you buy me one, I'm more than happy.
And we are going, by the way. We're doing this. But you're talking. I mean, there's not probably two dudes that you encounter that don't do coffee. Ever, right? I've never
very rarely.
Right. So for me, just discerning what a good coffee flavor is not any part of this for me. So it's just about the texture, and the texture in your beer to me is more appealing because it's not charred. It doesn't have that overriding bitterness from whether it's chocolate or whatever it is. So
and the texture in my beer, what's strange about it is that even though it's higher in alcohol than the defending champion, it's more drinkable. Like my beer. Usually when you get higher alcohol, you get viscosity and you get a burn.
Yeah.
You get a burn from the alcohol flavor, and you get heavier because alcohol's heavier than water. This beer should be lighter than that beer, the other way around. My beer should be heavier than that beer, but it's not. And this double cold brew, for those of you out listening in the warmth of late June, right, in Florida, you can drink this on a warm, humid day.
Yes,
it is actually refreshing. As opposed to most coffee stouts, you need a fireplace with a brandy snifter.
Right.
I mean, you really do.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
And a robe.
And then you start getting into some of these other beers that get syrupy and, they're back sweetened and stuff like that. And, those have their time and place, dessert beers and stuff like that. But this is a great all-around, easy drinking,
Yep.
I think you crushed it.
And you bring up a good point. Just to clarify, for people out there who are concerned about their health or what they're putting in their body, there's no lactose in my beer. There's no additives. There's no sugar. Nothing has been added to the beer. It's an imperial stout that would match Reinheitsgebot, just water, yeast, hops, and malt, and it just goes through coffee beans. That's it.
The Germany purity law, right?
Yeah, right. And so that's really the extent of it.
The German purity laws. They always come back around.
Deal, man.
It always comes back around. But it is like one of those discovery things. I mean, your information makes it even more evident. But in the side-by-side test, there's definitely a big difference in two beers that seemingly have the same thing to offer.
Right.
From the outside.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's not a matter of necessarily which beer is better, but the fact that my beer is in the same consideration set with the beer that's considered literally the benchmark for the category gives me a lot of pride. And also with the team at Brew Hub and with the roasting team at Concord, it's a team effort to do a beer like this. Should we talk about where they can find it?
Absolutely.
So for this beer, you can find it at every Total Wine in the state. Here locally, you can find it at both Perrine's location, the two in New Smyrna Beach and Port Orange. You can also find it at a few of the ABCs around. And most importantly, unfortunately not in Flagler and Volusia County yet, but throughout the rest of Central Florida, you can find it in Publix now. So it's in 75 Publix, thank you. They're mostly the larger Publix. They're not in every Publix in Central Florida, but they're mostly the larger Publix from Lakeland through the metro Orlando area and then down to the Space Coast.
Excellent. And to find other locations on draft or package for independent spots or on premise for draft, you could always check out our website,
srprot.com/beerfinder.
That's right.
Right there, you can find this beer. You're not going to find this one. I'm about to finish it.
And I'm sure if you're drinking it in Flagler County, at some point you'll run into Steve.
Right.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I'll probably be wearing the shirt.
Right, absolutely.
Right. And I will tell you that my kid enjoyed her entire junior year in high school wearing that shirt 4 days a week, probably.
That's awesome.
And no one knows that it might have beer. They just think it's a fun coffee.
I think I should get another one for you. So
Yes.
it's not for your kid.
Again, we've had this discussion before, and I had to give up a lot of my wardrobe. But that's
Before
right.
we leave, do you want to explain the name Alcatraz?
Yes. So I do the swim every year from Alcatraz to San Francisco. This year will be the 21st consecutive year.
Oh, my gosh.
For the last 10 years, I've done the swim without a wetsuit.
I can't even make it across my pool.
Right.
Well, I grew up swimming and playing water polo, and so this is not. It's difficult, but it's not that difficult. So when I was training for the swim, I don't know, it was like probably 10 years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night and thought Alcatraz would be a great name for a beer.
Yeah.
And I wrote it on the Post-its you were
right.
looking at. I wrote it on a Post-it, put it on my nightstand, went to work the next day, came home, went up, researched it. It was available. I was shocked. Turns out there had been an Alcatraz Brewing Company, had been around for 18 years. They went bankrupt and defaulted on the trademark 5 weeks before I applied for it.
Oh, my God.
And I'd never even heard of them before.
Really?
I just wrote it down. I got the trademark, and I think it's a great name for a beer. And for people who are thinking about authenticity, so number one, I do the swim from Alcatraz every year, and then I originally brewed the Alcatraz beers at Half Moon Bay Brewing Company on the coast just south of San Francisco. So now the beers are all brewed at Brew Hub in Lakeland, but they were originally brewed in the Bay Area in California.
That's great. That's awesome.
It is. It's and so when do you go? It's in the fall, right?
I'm going in August this
in
year.
August. Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
And it's already in the 60s probably out there in August, isn't
Well,
it?
the water temperature lately has gotten into the 60s, but most years it's between 55 and 59.
My goodness.
Oh, my gosh. I think I just got chills just
So
thinking about it.
62 is downright balmy in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
But you don't want a wetsuit.
No.
What about a snow cap and a jacket?
No.
think
I
they'll weigh you
do.
down.
I do wear the hood. They make you wear the hood because that way they can see
gotta
if
find you.
something
Fair
happens
enough.
in the water
Sure,
or whatever.
sure.
And I do wear goggles. I did a few years without goggles. That was not fun.
No.
That made it even worse.
Listen, I usually wear goggles on these episodes, but we only had 2 beers. I think
Beer
there
goggles.
was
Hence your blindfold.
low
instead.
chance of getting splashed.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. You said pride, and you should be proud of this beer. It's
absolutely.
fantastic.
Thank
you.
It's one of my favorites to talk about with other people. So well done, Steve.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I'd love to come back sometime and do the same thing with the Alcatraz
do it.
Double IPA against a market leader.
Let's
Absolutely.
go do taste tests at bars right now. Just random stuff. Let's go.
I'm not swimming anywhere.
Steve, cheers. Yeah. No, we'll just swim a bar, actually.